There's a lot of back and forth. Some people are saying you should train to failure for maximum muscle growth.
Next weight up, boom, boom, all the way to the top until you just can't do it. 3 pump sets and 4 sets in a row, 5 sets in a row. It was always all out. Right! Yeah. Others are saying that you shouldn't.
Training to failure builds more muscle. Ooh. I want real failure.
That's gotta build more muscle.
It's a myth.
Train to failure does not build more muscle?
The best research shows that as long as you're 1 to 2 reps shy of failure, you see equivalent hypertrophy as if you go all the way to failure.
What the truth of it is, I believe, is that it depends where you are in your journey. So the case that Jeff Nippard makes is that a lot of the scientific literature points towards coming 1 or 2 reps shy of literal physical failure, where you cannot mechanically move the weight any further with your muscle, not that you gave up in your mind. That's going to be better for muscle growth. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the studies I've seen related to this are typically on beginner or intermediate lifters. And I think that that's actually true, because if you redline, you max out, you take the RPMs to frickin' 1,000 on a single set, the degree of fatigue is very taxing mentally and physically. And I would say for the beginner or intermediate lifter, same way that I was at this time, it's difficult to continue to have a productive workout for the sets that come after you've already redlined. Where if you came just shy of that, you'd have much more energy physically and mentally for the rest of the sets in your session. And then the totality of the workout could be more productive, because set 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 were also fairly intense, and you moved more weight for more reps, not going to failure in every set. Whereas if you crank it, redline it, the very first set, all those successive sets are semi-compromised, right? Because you just don't have as much energy because you already zapped yourself. So the total workout in terms of the weight and reps that you did could actually be less. And therefore, training to failure could be less effective. Now, why do more advanced, more extreme individuals seem to consistently preach training intensity as being very important? The reason is, I believe, as you become more advanced, and maybe you haven't been training all the way to failure, but you've made substantial progress. You've put on maybe 20 or 30 pounds of muscle over many years, given that you've stayed consistent. Once you get to that more advanced level and you're starting to come closer to the extremes in terms of muscle development, increasing the intensity is an additional lever that you can pull that will produce more growth if you've developed not only just the physical base or capability to push to failure throughout the whole workout, but also the mental capability. In that first set, after you're warmed up and you're going to train to failure because you train hard and intensity is key, you redline yourself. You absolutely cook yourself in that set. You need a certain degree of skill or mental fortitude or experience to be able to maintain that intensity standard for multiple sets throughout the workout for it to be beneficial. And the more beginner or intermediate trainee is very likely to not be capable of this. I wasn't capable of this. Most people aren't. But on the extremes, if you look at people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, individuals that are, famous and well known for the amount of muscle they put on their body, they're pushing with extreme degrees of intensity. But that's not most people. And obviously you can say that there's anabolics and other things involved, but even somebody like GVS, who is, claiming natural, I believe he is, but we never know for sure. He swears by extreme intensity, leading to his additional results as he's gotten more advanced, because he's developed the physical resilience and the mental resilience to get the benefits out of taking all the sets to failure. And in an earlier stage in his training, or in anybody's training, that could actually be counterproductive, again, because it makes it difficult to continue to have productive sets throughout the workout if you haven't built up that physical and mental resilience from taking a set to true physical failure for it to actually be beneficial. And furthermore, I would say that in the beginning to intermediate stages, you don't really need that extreme intensity to see progress. As long as you're consistent, and pushing a set close to failure is still really high intensity. Even if you leave one rep in reserve, like most people still aren't doing that. So that you're still training with high intensity, but you're not literally maxing the set out where you couldn't get one more, or you can't complete a whole rep. That's probably not necessary for most people. And I think that's why a lot of these studies show that in a lot of intermediate beginner levels, that it's actually more productive to not push the sets to failure, so you can have higher quality sets throughout the workout, instead of like one or two maybe really potent, extremely high intensity sets, and then 6 sets that are kind of garbage because you've already cooked yourself. So I think that hopefully that, sheds some light to understand why there is seemingly evidence on both sides of the aisle in favor of not training to failure. In the case of, the science-based lifting community, people like Jeff Nippard, Dr. Mike, and then, seemingly a ton of evidence pointing towards training to failure being more beneficial. And I would say there seems to be a correlation with individuals that have, very extreme physiques, and they're the very tippy top of the iceberg, almost always train with extremely high intensity, because that's when it's going to be most beneficial, and that's when anything that gives you an additional edge is actually really important. And you get to a point where you're checking all your boxes with consistency, you've got good technique, you're doing an adequate amount of volume, you've ramped up your frequency, your diet is really good, your recovery is really good, you're sleeping well. What else can I do? I can learn the skill of developing intensity and finding ways to push sets harder and harder, further and further. And individuals that go down that path will consistently see that, given that they've built up that physical and mental resilience over many years, sprinkling in that additional extreme intensity does produce more growth. And I think that's why, myself included, a lot of people are quite passionate about the whole training to failure, not training to failure thing. I think that there's justification for both arguments. So for you, I think you just need to assess where you are in your journey. And if you're, not on the extreme end of muscle growth, where you've been consistent for like more than 5 years, and you've added maybe 20, 30 plus pounds of muscle. If that's you, and you're stuck in a plateau, and you maybe haven't been pouring a lot of your attention and energy into taking your sets to higher degrees of fatigue, you could and probably would benefit from now beginning to explore increasing the intensity, because you're out of other options that are going to produce additional growth. And I think at this point, given you've built up the physical and mental resilience and fortitude, that you will benefit from an extremely high intensity. That's just my take, okay? I'm just trying to provide some, ease some people's minds. If you're out there and you're hearing from all these different sources, some people say train to failure, some people don't. I think this is a story that kind of explains some of that disagreement. And so you just need to assess where you are. And if you're not extremely advanced and in a, plateau where you're doing everything you feel like you can, if that's not you and you're still growing, or it's only been a couple of years, then you probably don't need to take all your sets to absolute maximum, and just focus on training with high intensity, coming close to failure, and making all of your sets in your workout as productive as possible. And if you still need to improve your recovery, or you still need to train more consistently, or you've just only been at it for a year or two, then you don't need to worry that much about pushing every set to the depths of hell with murderous intentions. But as you become more advanced, it's one of the crucial factors that will produce additional growth, in my opinion. So I hope that makes sense for you to, factor into your own approach, to understand why there's such disagreement in the lifting community, and where you fit into that and what intensity you need to bring to your workouts to see growth. And also, if you're a little bit more beginner intermediate, there's probably some additional benefit in, building those habits, learning to do the exercises correctly. And also, if you don't love physical pain, you're not a sicko in the head like me, you want to enjoy your workouts, then pushing with high intensity, taxing yourself, but saving a rep or two is probably going to actually be better. And you just need to be prepared that if you really love it and 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, you still want to push for more growth, then I think really, asking yourself how much you love it and how much pain you're willing to push through and how much like ferocious intensity you can really bring to your workouts to just take them to that next level is the question you need to ask yourself. And if you really love it and you're really hungry for it and you still want more growth, then I think exploring higher degrees of intensity is something that you should do yourself. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you haven't done it, it's worth a try. It's worth trying not training to failure. I've spent periods of time where I've explored that because maybe there's something to it, is what I thought. And I've explored, taking it to extremes with high degrees of intensity and every other different variable, high volume, low volume, high frequency, low frequency, everything you can think of. And I've learned a lot through that process myself. And I condense all that information down into my arm course. If you want to get some gigantic freaking Python, sign up for that. It's the #1 resource on the internet for growing your arms. But you as the lifter, I will encourage you to experiment for yourself so you also have that feedback from your own body telling you exactly what results you're getting from the exact actions that you're taking. That's ultimately the most powerful tool that you have, more powerful than what I think, more powerful than what other content creators think, scientists, whoever is telling you what to do. You should always try to experiment things on yourself and reflect at how your body responded and let that contribute or dictate what you think about how you should train, how you should go about the process for growing muscle. Hope that helps you to make some more gains. Sign up for the ARM program, get some giant pipe daddies. Have a great freaking day. Peace.